Today, we're cracking open the playbook of one of history's greatest minds. We're talking about a man who didn't just write about power, he rewrote the map of an entire subcontinent with his intellect. This is all about the kingmaker's playbook, the Chanakya Niti.
Right off the bat, you get a sense of who this guy was. You have to understand for Chanakya, impossible wasn't a fact. It was an opinion, an excuse. And this wasn't just some catchy phrase for him. It was basically his operating system, the very code that drove him to do things everyone else swore couldn't be done.
And this is the man himself, Acharya Chanakya. Now, you might just see a scholar from the 4th century BC, but this teacher from the legendary University of Takshashila was also a political genius who wasn't content to just study history. He was determined to grab it with both hands and bend it to his will.
But what turns a brilliant scholar into a ruthless kingmaker? Well, it wasn't just ambition. No, it all started with a deep, personal insult, a moment of public humiliation that lit the fuse on one of the most incredible revenge stories in all of history. So, let's set the scene. We're in ancient India, in the heart of the Nanda Empire. You gotta understand, this place was the superpower of its day, immensely rich with a massive army, but it was ruled by a king who is known for his staggering arrogance.
One day, our scholar Chanakya finds himself in the court of this king Dhanananda, and the king, just drunk on his own power, takes one look at this simply dressed but obviously brilliant man and publicly insults him, humiliates him. It was a huge mistake, an act of pride that would end up costing him everything.
In that exact moment, something in Chanakya snapped. He made a vow right then and there. He untied his shika, that's the traditional tuft of hair scholars wore, and swore he would not tie it back up again until he had completely and utterly destroyed the Nanda dynasty. This wasn't just talk, it became his single-minded obsession.
So, how in the world does one man, a scholar, take down an entire empire? Well, not with an army of his own. He used a much sharper weapon, his mind. And that personal quest for revenge? It was about to become the spark that unified India.
And here's where it gets really interesting. You've got to look at the big picture. Chanakya looked around and saw a land of small, bickering kingdoms totally unprepared for a real threat, like, say, Alexander the Great's armies marching in from the west. He knew the only way to survive was to unite, so his plan to crush the Nandas became part of a much bigger, much bolder vision, creating the very first great Indian empire.
You know, Chanakya's real genius was finding the perfect person to execute his plan, a young, ambitious man named Chandragupta Maurya. He saw this raw talent and just molded it. He taught him everything. Not just how to fight, but how to think, how to strategize. This wasn't just giving advice, this was forging a king from the ground up.
And the best part? Chanakya didn't just keep all this incredible knowledge locked away in his head. Nope, he wrote it all down. What we're left with is this timeless collection of wisdom called the Chanakya Niti. It's basically a blueprint for power, for leadership, and for life.
So what does Niti even mean? Well, it's not just a bunch of boring rules. Think of it more like a guide to practical wisdom. It's about how to move through the world smartly, whether you're trying to run a country or just trying to get through your day-to-day life. And just look at the scope of this thing. It's absolutely breathtaking. The Niti covers the whole shebang. We're talking high-level stuff like running a government and economic policy. And then it drills all the way down to how you should act in public, your own personal ethics, and, maybe most importantly, how to tell who's really on your side and who's a secret enemy. It is a complete guide to the game of life. Okay, let's get into some of the real juicy stuff from the Niti. This is where this ancient book starts to feel incredibly modern, because it just nails these timeless truths about people that are just as real today as they were 2,000 years ago.
I mean, listen to this. Chanakya's advice is so simple, it's brutal. He says, you don't find your real friends when everything's going great. The real test is when things fall apart. The person who shows up when you're sick or in a crisis, that's your ally. The ones who are only around when you're successful, well, they're just along for the ride.
And look at how he zeroes in on your inner circle. He warns that 4 things can bring a kind of misery into your home that's like death itself. A bad partner, a fake friend, an employee who undermines you, and yeah, a literal snake in your house. The message is crystal clear. The most dangerous threats are often the ones you let inside.
Now, some of his advice is a pretty stark reminder of the world he lived in. This one's about being cautious of things that are naturally powerful or unpredictable. Back in 4th century BC India, this was just practical common sense advice. It was a world where a wild animal, a flash flood, or court politics could get you killed in an instant.
But for every warning he gave, Chanakya also saw opportunity. He was a total pragmatist. His core belief? Wisdom is everywhere, if you're smart enough to look for it. Just like medicine can be derived from poison, a brilliant idea can come from anyone, no matter who they are or where they come from. He's saying don't get hung up on the source, focus on the value of the knowledge itself.
So why? Why are we still talking about this guy from the 4th century BC? Well, the answer is pretty simple. His insights into strategy, power, and just plain old human nature are as relevant now as they've ever been.
Think about that for a second. For over 2,400 years, these ideas have survived. They've been studied, debated, and put into practice by everyone from emperors to CEOs. The fact that they're still around tells you just how powerful they really are.
And this is not just some dusty old history lesson. His ideas about sizing up your competition, making smart alliances, and managing your resources, that's the foundation of modern business strategy. The battlefield might have changed from an open field to a corporate boardroom, but the rules of the game, they're exactly the same.
Which really just leaves us with one final thought. In our crazy, fast-paced world, with all its new technology and constant change, which of these ancient 2,400-year-old rules for life, for strategy, for judging people, still ring true for you? The playbook's right here, and its lessons are absolutely timeless.